Hello everybody, I'm Drew Bailey and today we're going to be talking about modeling a charged strip of tape as a line charge. Our goal is to use our knowledge from a previous lab to determine the charge on a piece of tape. In the last lab, we modeled it as a point charge and got the charge to be about 4.8 e to the negative 9 coulombs. Today we're modeling it as a line of charge and more accurately estimating it to be about 6 e to the negative 9 coulombs. The figure on the left we can see a model for this charge, which we'll talk about later. On the right is a picture showing the process for the charged tape in this lab. Keep this picture in mind, as we'll talk about it throughout the lab. As seen in the last slide, two pieces of tape were ripped apart, giving them opposite charges. This is the experiment we completed in Lab 1. After charging these tapes, we took the two upper tapes and conducted a test on them to experimentally determine the charge. This was done by placing one of the top tapes, tape B, between two books and holding the other tape, tape A, up to tape B until it appeared to be levitating. This is seen in the figure on the left. To calculate the charge, we use the principles on the right. The top principle is Coulomb's law. It states that like charges repel and opposite charges attract. This is seen in our experiment because we know that tape A and tape B have like charges and will therefore repel. The second principle we use is the momentum principle, as shown in the bottom right. This states that an object's momentum is equal to the sum of its forces. We know that the tape has no velocity at the point of levitation, so the left side of the equation becomes 0, leaving the sum of the forces equal to 0. This is how we calculated the charge on the tape. In order to make this calculation, we made a few assumptions. We treated the tape as a singular point charge. This equation is shown on the left. In today's lab, we will treat it as a line of charges. This is the equation shown on the right. This no longer assumes the charge is concentrated at a singular point. However, it does still assume that the tape's charge is evenly distributed along the length of the tape. This calculation works by breaking along the tape into separate parts and calculating the electric field by each section and adding them together to get the total charge. We should now recall some measurements and calculations done in Lab 1. Here we see the length of the tape, the mass of the tape, the distance between the two tapes, and the charge we found in Lab 1. This is a computer model made using the calculations from Lab 1. In this model, we used the charge calculated in Lab 1 to create the force of the electric field when the tape was modeled as a line of charges. We can see that this is no longer correct because the force of gravity and the force of the electric field are not equal. We know this is not right because when the tape was levitating, these forces are in fact supposed to be equal. Now we can see that the two forces are equal. Using iteration, the charge of the two tapes was determined to be about 6 e to the negative 9 coulombs in order to make the force of the electric field equal to the force of gravity. So, does this make sense? We found in Lab 1 that the charge of the tape was about 4.8 e to the negative 9 coulombs. In Lab 2, we found that this number was in fact wrong, and that the charge is actually something closer to 6 e to the negative 9 coulombs. But we see that the force of the electric field was the same in both labs. So how does this make sense? Because we observed 2-point charges in Lab 1, these charges acted directly on one another, with one arrow in one direction. In Lab 2, we revised this by modeling it as 2 line charges, with one line acting on one point. This distribution of charge creates more distance between the total charge and the point. This means the total charge must be greater to compensate for this. Therefore, these results make sense. If we wanted to make a more accurate model of the tape, we would break it down into more than just 10 spheres, or pieces, or we would make it look like a plane of charge in order to represent the tape more closely.